Story time about how my father is obsessed with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm sending me on Instagram. And trigger warning, my mom and dad had me when they were very, very young. My mom was 14 years old when she got pregnant with me. From what my mom told me, my parents were pretty much together throughout the whole pregnancy. Even though they were both in high school, they wanted to move in together and try to raise me like a regular family. But my maternal grandmother had a very big issue with this. She wanted my mom to continue going to high school and possibly even give me up for adoption. But my mom was not having it, so she decided to move out with my dad. Once I was born, unfortunately, my parents just couldn't take care of me. My dad was too busy playing his football and trying to get a scholarship. And my mom just didn't really know how to take care of a child. I mean, she was a child herself. This is when my grandmother stepped in and decided to take me in, which I thank God for every single day of my life. My grandmother raised me as her own daughter, and she has been the most amazing woman in my entire life. My parents split up, and through most of my childhood, I lived with my mom and my grandmother. I didn't see my dad for about 10 years. By the time I saw him again, I was 15 years old. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my father is obsessed with me. Disclaimer, is not my story time. Instead of me on Instagram. And trigger warning. I finally saw my father again when I was 15 years old. From the moment he saw me, he wanted to hug me and kiss me all the time. At first, I thought it was normal because he's my father and he hadn't seen me in over 10 years. After a few weeks of him coming to visit me, I started feeling really strange. This was also around the time where I was getting noticed by boys in school. And you know that feeling you get when you know a guy likes you? Well, that's the feeling I started getting from my own father. Every time he touched me, it was like too touchy. And every kiss was just strange. One of the things that really started to bother me was that he liked going to the beach, and he wanted to make it a thing. He would always say, let's go to the beach on the weekend, but I didn't feel comfortable with him. First off, he never invited my mom to come or my grandma, so it was always just me and him. He even took me shopping for bikinis, and this is when my stomach dropped. At the bikini shop, he asked for small bikinis, like the type that show a lot of skin. Told him I wasn't comfortable with that. I wanted a bathing suit. He said no and bought me a thong bikini. He stared at me all day at the beach. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how my father is obsessed with me, part 3. After he bought me the thong bikini and forced me to wear it at the beach, I noticed he was staring at me. I wrapped myself in a towel and told him I wanted to leave. After that, I told my mom and my grandma how I felt about my dad. They thought that I was exaggerating, but I knew that I wasn't. My mom asked him to never ever do anything like that again, and he said he wouldn't. After that, he would always do certain things, like stare at me too much, or always want to hug me and kiss me. And for my own comfort and safety, I put a lot of space between him and I. When I was 18, I finally got my first boyfriend. He became enraged when my mom told him. He told my mom that I was acting like a slut. That's when I cut him out completely from my life. A year later, I got on Instagram, and that's when he started following me there. He started leaving strange comments on all my pictures, and eventually he started offering me money to spend more time with him. I told him I wasn't comfortable with him. That's when he told me that all he wanted to do was watch me take a bath, and that he would pay me thousands if I let him. My grandmother and my mom have completely cut him out of our lives. On the day of my wedding, we hired security to keep him away. And of course, he managed to show up, but security kicked him out. I'm thinking I should get a restraining order. Luckily, my mental health hasn't suffered too much from this. He's obviously an unwell person, but I actually feel really bad for him. And I feel like getting a restraining order is just gonna make things worse. What the heck should I do? Bye. My fiance does not know that my ex pays for my bills and my student loans. Am I the asshole for not telling him? After my crazy toxic relationship with my ex, he promised he would always help me financially. So in 2020, when I lost my job, I hit him up and he sent me money right away. He sent me $10,000 to start with. I paid bills and some of my student loans off, and 3 months later I asked him for another 10 grand. But he actually sent me 30 instead. This held me over for almost a full year. This was right around the time that I met my now fiance. When my fiance and I started dating, of course I was not going to tell him that my ex was paying for my stuff. He just assumed that I had money saved up. Luckily last year I did get rehired at my old job, but with a pay cut. When my fiance and I moved in together, I asked him if he could pay most of the rent, and he said no. He said he was only able to pay for half of the rent, and he literally splits everything. This man even makes me split the cost of toilet paper. I get a Venmo request from him almost every single day every time he buys something. I'm trying not to let it bother me, but at the same time, is he going to be able to support me when I'm pregnant? I asked him if he would be willing to help me financially. He said no. Part 3 is up. My fiance doesn't know that my ex is paying for my student loans and my bills. Am I the asshole for not telling him? That's when I asked my fiance if he could help me out financially. This man said no. I was actually shocked. I started to cry and I told him exactly what I thought. First off, he makes me split everything and never invites me out to dinner. Like, never offers to pay for anything. Even if I wanted like a cookie or something at Starbucks, he doesn't pay for that. I have offered to pay for things for him. Sometimes I'll buy dinner for us on the way home and I don't ask him to pay me. I was really close to confessing to him that my ex was paying for a lot of stuff for me. But that's when my fiance told me that he just thinks it's fair for me to pay for my own things. I asked him, what about when I'm pregnant? What if I can't work? He says that I can just pay for my stuff with my own savings. Then I asked him if he would be able to pay for all the kids' things. He said no, that I would have to pay for exactly half of the kids' things. And I know what you're thinking. The fact that we didn't have this conversation before we got engaged is crazy. Now I really want to tell him about my ex. And I'm even thinking about getting back with my crazy ex. My fiance is just so blah now to me. Like I can't even look at him the same way anymore. I know I'm not being unreasonable. It's not like I'm asking him to pay for everything. What should I do? Am I the asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother? A month ago, I borrowed my mom's phone and she had no idea, but I looked at all of her apps and found that she was cheating with multiple men. I'm 26 years old and my parents have now been married for 30 years. I actually got separated when I graduated from high school, but then they got back together a few years later. My mom has always been the one that wants to separate my dad, but he keeps wanting to get back together with her. My dad is actually in love with this woman. He adores her. He does everything for her. He's super affectionate with her, loves to take her out on dates, gives her so much of his time, and she still doesn't appreciate it. I've always been closer to my dad than my mom. My mom's always trying to find an excuse to go party with her friends, but now I know why. Like I said, I ended up borrowing her phone and she probably didn't expect me to go snooping. And honestly, it wasn't even my intention. I'm scrolling on her phone and I see the app Tinder. I nearly fell out of my seat. So I quickly scrolled through everything and started taking pictures. My mom was sending nudes to random men. Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother? That's when I saw that she was sending nudes to men on different apps. Not only was she on Tinder, she was also on Bumble and an app for older people. Mind you, my father is still in love with this woman. I managed to take pictures of everything on the apps. Here's the worst part. Start going through her messages and that's when I found that she has a boyfriend. At that point, I didn't know how long they'd been together. Now I know that she's been with him for 6 months. So every single time she goes on her weekend trips with her friends, she's actually with her boyfriend. And get this, she uses my dad's money to pay for everything. An entire week passed before I confronted her. First, I didn't know how to confront her, but I had to just do it. Every time I saw my dad, I would start to cry and he was worried about me. I didn't have the heart to tell my dad until I confronted my mom. I went up to her and I showed her all the receipts I had. So she got pissed at me for looking through her phone. By the way, at this point, I'm still living with my parents. That's when she threatened to kick me out of the house if I told my dad anything. My own mother threatening me. Then she tried to smack me across the face, so I smacked her. Part 3 is up. Am I the asshole for wanting to expose my lying, cheating mother? After she slapped me, I slapped her back. And I slapped her so hard she actually fell on the floor. I instantly felt bad and tried to apologize. That's when she started to cry and I started to cry. I asked her to just be honest with me and tell me the truth. She told me that she wasn't in love with my dad anymore, but that she felt bad for him because he was still in love with her. And that she'd been dating this new guy for 6 months. She even confessed that she was addicted to going on dating apps and flirting with men. That's when I told her she needed to tell my dad. That she needed to stop using his money to take her boyfriend out. Then another confession. She had spent over $25,000 on hotels that she would book for her and her new boyfriend. And apparently this guy was broke. He couldn't pay for himself. She tried to negotiate with me. If I don't tell my dad, she'd break up with her boyfriend and stop using the apps. I mean, she's my mother and I don't want to cause her pain, but it's my dad. I ended up telling her that I wouldn't tell my dad. But 2 nights ago, my dad went on a work trip. My mom is so stupid, she actually snuck in her boyfriend through her window. I heard them doing the dirty all night. Now she's begging me again not to tell my dad. I'm planning on telling my dad tonight. I'll have to keep you guys updated. Give me advice. Storytime about how I became an IG model / escort for billionaires. Tell you that last month I made $60,000. This clear is not my story time and send me on Instagram. So at the beginning I had to lie about my age. I'm really 36 years old, but I say I'm 22. I do look a lot younger than I am, and of course I get filler and Botox. I started my Instagram account 6 years ago. My inspirations were Anna Cherie, Amanda Lee, I am JoJo, and Abigail Ratchford. I mean Abigail Ratchet. I basically copied all of these girls' pictures. Within a month of starting my Instagram account, I had 10,000 followers. And yes, all of them were males. But I didn't really start making money until 2018. You know, like every other girl on Instagram, I signed up for OF, and that's when I started making serious money. But I was also making money from Instagram. Brands would send me clothes and watches and protein powders, stuff like that. Eventually, I became an ambassador for one of the biggest Instagram clothing stores. I think we all know what I'm talking about. Fashion Hova, and I started making a lot of money then. So I basically started living above my means. I got myself a new apartment in Beverly Hills, and it was $6,000 a month. I also got myself a Mercedes, and I would exclusively shop at Air One. I would also go shopping at Rodeo Drive almost every day because I wanted the paparazzi to get pictures of me. And I even called the paparazzi on me a few times, so I had to pay them like $2,000 out of pocket. So yeah, I was spending a lot of money. Whatever money I got that month, I would literally spend it by the end. One month I spent $25,000 going out with friends. I would usually pick up the bill. This is what started getting me into trouble. Part 2 is story time about how I became an IG model / escort for billionaires. After I spent the $25,000 in 1 month, I decided I needed another income source. So I thought of escorting. One of my very good friends in LA was also an escort, and she told me about it, but I was like, I can't do that. But one day I called called her and she told me everything. She gets contacted through Instagram by very, very rich men, like billionaires. I honestly didn't believe her at first, but then she showed me receipts. Her bank account had more than $1 million in it. She told me that she had only been doing it for 6 months. She put me in contact with several people and they had to verify a bunch of my stuff. Then after a week, I was finally in. I was really scared. I had to go get my passport renewed. This meant that I was going to be traveling internationally with men that I didn't know. A few days later, I get a message on Instagram from an account. The guy that owned this account was clearly very rich. It wasn't him contacting me, it was his assistant. He got my information and 2 days later, I was on a private plane. I landed in a foreign country and I spent the entire weekend with this guy. He didn't speak English. Basically took me around his city and showed me off for his friends. I honestly didn't feel uncomfortable at any point and he didn't try anything. In fact, he was actually super shy, but his friends on the other hand were really handsy. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how I became an Instagram model / escort for billionaires. That's when his friends started getting really handsy. We were in a really expensive high-rise and the apartment was literally worth millions. And I knew that all of these guys were used to getting whatever they wanted. One of the friends actually grabbed my arm and told me to sit on his lap, but I told him I couldn't. He wasn't the one that hired me to be there, so I had to go straight to the guy that hired me. I told him that his friends were making me uncomfortable and he said, okay, we should leave then. I was actually shocked that he listened to what I wanted. Now one of my regular clients and I travel with him almost every 2 months. So let me tell you how much he paid me. For the 3-day weekend, I ended up with $50,000. Yep, that's right. But let me tell you a little about the dark side of this. A few jobs later, I ended up with somebody who was completely crazy. I ended up going to Vegas with this guy. He was approximately 10 years younger than me and was filthy rich. But he was also a complete psycho. He bought me this whole outfit that he wanted me to wear the entire night. I told him I was more comfortable in my clothes. I was wearing a Fendi dress. It looked great. That's when he said, no, you're gonna wear this. I ended up walking around Vegas in a micro mini skirt and a bikini top. By the end of this night, he was getting really aggressive. I tried to stay quiet, hoping that he would just forget that I was in his car. Suddenly, he turned to look at me and wanted me to do something. When I said no, he grabbed me by the hair and told me that he owned me for the night. Then he said, I'll add an extra $20,000 in there for you. And it does get worse. But now I learned to save my money. I no longer pay for my friends' drinks and food. I still have my $6,000 apartment and I upgraded my car. I live like a princess. I also bought my parents a house though. It was definitely one of the happiest days of my life. And believe it or not, I actually did end up finding love. My boyfriend is okay with my job, but he just asked me to be safe. Of course, he asked me every day to quit because he wants to support me, but he can't give me the life I've given myself. What should I do? My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. My husband and I have a really toxic relationship. When he and I first started dating, I was extremely jealous. I would instigate fights almost every single day. Now that we're married, I'm definitely less jealous, but he's always been jealous throughout our relationship. He tries to control everything I do, down to the way I dress and even the people I can or cannot hang out with. He even insisted that I quit my job, which I did. He's invested a lot in Tesla and crypto, so he makes a lot of money without having to leave the house, which yes, is totally amazing, but that means he and I are together all the time. And with his jealousy, sometimes I just can't stand him. I've tried to help him with his jealousy because I used to be in that place. And when I try to talk to him about it, he just gets mad at me. Whenever he sees that I post something on Instagram, he gets angry. He says that I'm looking for attention, which of course I am, but not from guys. Everyone posts on social media because they want to show off their life. A little on my sister. We're identical twins, and we're really, really close. Unfortunately, my sister got laid off from her job last year. That's when she decided to start her OnlyFriends. I support her in everything she wants to do. She's actually making really good money from it, so she's really happy about it. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to look for something. When I see my sister's pictures, part 2 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers are not my story time, is on Instagram. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to transfer some money from his account to mine. When I started looking for his banking app, I noticed something else on his screen. I had never seen this before, so I clicked on it. And as soon as I opened it, I see my sister's pictures. And I knew it was her OnlyFriends right away. By the way, I had never told my husband that my sister had an OnlyFriends. She wouldn't even post about it on her social media. So the fact that he found it makes me believe that he had my phone bugged or something. But here's the thing. He was using a different name for his account. So it was likely that my sister did not know it was him. From there, I could see that he was following a bunch of other girls. And when I went to their messages, he had paid over hundreds of dollars every single day to all of these girls. Can you imagine how much money that is? My husband came into the room and saw me on his phone. Of course, he didn't freak out because he never thought that I would find it. But I confronted him right away. But he didn't even flinch. He said he had every right to go on OnlyFans because it was the same thing as going to any website. I told him to at least unfollow my sister and he said that he wouldn't. He said he loved it because it was like watching me do naughty things. Then he said, isn't this better than cheating on you? I was flabbergasted. Part 3 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers are not my story time. It's on Instagram. That's when he told me that it was better than him cheating on me. And I was shocked. I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I threatened him. I told him that if he didn't stop following my sister, that I would start my own OnlyFriends account. Like I said, he's really jealous. So he went berserk. He ripped my phone out of my hand and threw it against the wall. Then he told me that the only reason he asked me to quit my job was so that I wouldn't be around other men. By the way, I used to be a personal trainer, and most of the time I would only train women. I told him that my sister and I wouldn't be comfortable with him looking at our OnlyFriends. It was so disturbing. Oh, and I also told him that he needed to stop controlling me, and that I could buy my own phone with my own money and start my own account. Then he came to his senses and started to apologize. And I also told him that I was suspecting that he bugged my phone, and that he was receiving my messages, because there was no other way he could have found out about my sister's account. Then he calmed down and explained things to me. He said that he had bugged my phone a few months ago because I was posting too much on Instagram and it was bothering him. So basically, he has access to my DMs and all my text messages. Promised to stop doing that and that he would buy me a new phone. And that's how he found out about my sister's OnlyFriends. He said he only signed up out of curiosity, and that he only wanted to see a few pictures and then delete it. But the more he kept looking at her pictures, the more he would think of me, and that it turned him on. And in front of me, he deactivated his account and deleted everything. He promised me that he would never do that again. Of course, I haven't forgiven him though. Haven't even spoken to him in days. But every time he sees me, he tries to kiss me and hug me. And when I push him away, he tries even harder. Honestly, I think he likes it. I do believe that he's secretly addicted to drama and that he thrives on it. I'm planning on never telling my sister about it. I don't think she'd feel comfortable around him ever again. I mean, I don't feel comfortable around him right now. I'm so confused and I don't know if I should leave him or not. He's so controlling all the time. What should I do?